There are lots of awkward moments in life, but few are more awkward than the moment when a room full of professional journalists, the cream of the crop of 21st century American news reporting, need to be instructed on how to properly do their jobs by a guy from Cameroon. But that's a thing that happened yesterday in the Brady briefing room during what was supposed to be some nauseatingly mawkish public farewell for Tony Fauci, who apparently couldn't bear going into his retirement without one more hour with his face in front of the camera where his fake news performance artist friends can get one more chance to blow a bunch of smoke up his wrinkly old ass and tell him how awesome and heroic he is. Because when a guy helps our hostile foreign enemy build a bioweapon lab and then helps them build a bioweapon in the bioweapon lab and then spends 2 years lying about what happened in the bioweapon lab while the bioweapon lab kills upward of 1 million Americans, the obvious response in a sane world would be to fire the guy from his damn job and criminally prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. But alas, we don't live in a sane world. Far from it, in fact. In the absurdist clown world in which we are also privileged to be living, a guy like Tony Fauci, who arguably has caused more harm to more Americans than any government official in the history of the Republic, gets to spend his last day soaking up the plaudits of the fake news media and basking in the glow of his many various achievements, whatever those might be. And for the first 10 or 15 minutes of this thing, it all went pretty much according to plan. The spectacularly untalented White House press secretary, Baghdad Buckwheat, historic shatterer of glass ceilings, trailblazing role model for black, gay, female, immigrant, lesbian women of color the world over, she was only calling on people sitting in the first 2 rows, which is where all the reporters sit, who are known to be friends of the regime, shall we say. So your CNN, your NBC News, your Washington Post, your New York Times, the people who can be relied upon to only ever ask the easiest of softball questions. The people the White House comms staff go out to dinner with and drinks after work each day. The team players, in other words, the people who understand that their only job in that briefing room is to make Joe Biden and Baghdad Buckwheat look good. Moreover, if you're such a reliable teacher's pet that you earn yourself a permanent chair in those first 2 rows, that status effectively functions as a license to ask unlimited questions with unlimited follow-ups. And so during your typical White House daily press briefing, the dutiful fake news ass-kissers in the front rows, they wind up taking up at least 80% of the time, asking questions that fall into one of 2 categories. It's either a thinly veiled invitation to deliver a pre-scripted monologue, or it's a fake marshmallow of a question dressed up in the costume of a legitimately probative journalistic inquiry, which it never actually is. The other 20% of the time, they grudgingly allow some of the people in the back rows to participate. Peter Doocy of Fox News typically gets 1 question, and only 1 question each day, just so the White House can falsely claim to be giving equal time and not playing favorites. But at least he gets the same chair every day. When you get past the 3rd row, then it becomes sort of a rotating cast of reporters from news agencies all over the country and all over the world. So if you're one of those, then your organization is credentialed to do its reporting from the White House, but your reporter has no guarantee of getting a seat in the daily briefing. Maybe 1 day a week your guy will have a chance to be in the room, but there's a very slim prospect of him actually being called upon to ask a question, no matter how long he keeps his hand in the air. And so it happened yesterday. A couple of the naughty kids in the back rows decided, you know what? This is all pretty ridiculous and embarrassing. We're all supposed to be reporters here. This is a press briefing. The man standing at the podium is a figure of considerable controversy due to his actions before and during the pandemic, and nobody is asking him about anything that matters. This has more of the vibe of a birthday party than an exercise in journalism, and the 2 people in the room who decided to take a stand for honest, ethical news reporting in the United States were a Russian woman and a Cameroonian man. Diana Glebova, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, was the one who decided that she couldn't take this bullshit anymore. After 20 minutes of sitting there with her hand up, not getting called on, she decides to just blurt it out. She challenges Baghdad Buckwheat. She says, you've got the nation's top public health official here. This is our last ever chance to ask him questions, and there hasn't been one single word about the origins of the virus that made him an internationally famous world celebrity. And just so we're clear, that's not a direct quote, it's a paraphrase, but that was the spirit of what she said. Well, Baghdad Buckwheat was having none of this, and just like an annoyed kindergarten teacher, she proceeded to give Miss Glebova a good, stern talking to about just how rude and unacceptable it is to speak when one hasn't been called upon. You keep up this behavior, Missy, and I will send your ass straight to the vice principal's office and place a call to your parents. And the hall monitor kids in the first two rows, they were right there ready to assist the teacher in putting down the insurrection, shushing her, telling her to keep quiet. You're being so rude. Hey lady, you know what I call rude? Building a fucking bioweapon that kills 1 million Americans. But maybe that's just me. All of the other so-called news reporters in the room just sat there silently, not wanting to cause trouble and potentially get detention after school. All except Simon Mateba, Washington correspondent for Africa News Today, who was he was only in the room because it was his day in the rotation. Nobody else in the room but this guy was willing to stand up and be not only an ethical journalist, but a grown-ass man with a functioning set of testicles, which is an all-too-rare commodity in today's Washington. He says, look, there's nothing unreasonable about the question she wants to ask, and she should be allowed to ask it. There is nobody in the world who is more qualified to speak on the origins of the pandemic than this sleazy, gravel-voiced little midget you have brought in here today. And we are a room full of news reporters, after all. And so it's completely absurd that you should be preventing us from asking the number one most obvious, most pertinent question that this man needs to answer. Oh, no, you're being rude to our guest, Simon. I'm done with you. She actually thought she could bring Tony Fauci into the White House briefing room on his last day and nobody would ask any questions about the origin of the virus. That is how habituated the officials of our government are to living in a world where journalism is just activism with a press pass. Diana Glebova and Simon Mateba, you may not be Americans, but you are nevertheless American heroes today. A grateful nation starved for honest news reporting gives you a hearty and well-deserved hat tip. Jim Eagle, hit the music. From atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where unlike Twitter HQ, we are 99% certain we don't have a secret hidden room full of Stay Woke t-shirts. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. American, all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. I am your eponymous host and humble servant, and there are some days when I'll be reading the news and I'll see a story, and instantaneously, I know that night's video just wrote itself. Today was one of those days, and the moment in question was when I saw the story that said Ron Klain, who's either the White House Chief of Staff or the actual president, depending on whom you ask, had tweeted out a set of Thanksgiving talking points. The idea being that if you're a big Joe Biden fan and your evil, dastardly, Trump-loving family members start talking shit around the dinner table tomorrow, then you can use this exhaustive list of Joe Biden's greatest achievements to totally own Grandpa and Uncle Bill and send them scurrying back to their evil, filthy MAGA cave of shame. Jim Eagle, I think let's put this thing up on the screen because there is much to unpack here. Now, we talked on Monday about what always happens in the fake news media during the lead up to Thanksgiving in recent years, where your fashionably woke liberal publications start running articles about how it's not okay to set politics aside for several hours one day per year to get through your Thanksgiving dinner because, damn it, if you have got a Trump supporter in your family, that bastard needs to be named and shamed. And what better time and place for it than during the most important traditional familial gathering of the entire year? The point of all this, as we well know by now, is as a component of the larger effort to disintegrate the nuclear family and make it no longer the main unit around which societies are organized. Because the radical left and they haven't been shy about saying this, they view the nuclear family as an impediment to realizing their vision of their new woke utopia. A woke-topia, if you will, where the individual has no meaningful relationships with anyone except the state. We've known for some time, many years now in fact, that this effort was afoot because it is impossible to miss, and they get less subtle about the nature of their agenda with each passing year. But nevertheless, I was shocked, flummoxed, gobsmacked even, to see the mask drop so completely that the freaking White House is now directly interjecting itself into the effort to wreck your family and see to it that you become estranged from any of your blood relatives who might question the tenets of the globalist neoliberal project. Now, the first thing you may notice about this list is that it is short and unimpressive. Fuck you. Lady Curmudgeon did not say that. I will have you lashed to the mainmast and flogged 30 times if you do another outburst like that. You insolent son of a bitch. The second thing you may notice about this list is that the grammar is often quite weird. Not unlike those funny pictures you see of signs where somebody took some Chinese words and Google translated it into English and it came out sounding like total nonsense. So the name of this document, it's right there under the White House letterhead, is President Biden's Top Accomplishments for When Chatting with Your Uncle at Thanksgiving. And I'm sorry, that does not sound like it was written by a native English speaker, but moving on. Section 1, Tackling Inflation and Lowering Costs. First bullet point. Gas prices are down by $1.35 a gallon since June, and inflation is moderating. Fact check. Gas is still up around $2 a gallon on average from when Joe Biden took office and immediately ripped the beating heart out of the energy sector. Talk about damning yourself with faint praise, and this is the number one thing on the list. This is the top accomplishment of Joe Biden's presidency at the halfway mark. They led with this? And as far as inflation moderating, is that the new buzzword now? After you guys realized it was pretty embarrassing that you had spent 2 entire years calling inflation transitory? Second bullet point, unsnarling supply chains to lower the cost of goods. Fact check. I have no idea what this one is supposed to mean or why it is phrased in the present tense. Do you see what I mean about the weird grammar? Third bullet point, saving Americans with hearing loss up to $3,000 on hearing aids. Fact check. Really? This is Joe Biden's number 3 most auspicious achievement as president. So when your Uncle Bob points out that Biden wrecked the economy, threw open the border, promoted violent crime, promoted transing the kids, and said half the people in the country are morally irredeemable semi-fascists, the rejoinder to that is supposed to be, but he made it so deaf people can save $300 on hearing aids. Okay then. Best of luck with that. Fourth bullet point. Tackling junk fees that cost Americans billions, like surprise overdraft charges. Fact check. Again, we've got the weird, awkward use of the present tense, and again, I'm not sure what this means. If I overdraw my bank account, why the hell shouldn't I be charged a fee? Never mind the fact that if my balance is that low, Joe Biden's dumbass policies probably have a hell of a lot to do with it. Section 2. Took on Big Pharma and won lowering prescription drug and health care costs. First bullet point, capping annual out-of-pocket prescription drug costs at $2,000 for seniors on Medicare. Second bullet point, capping insulin copays at $35 per prescription for seniors on Medicare. Third bullet point, lowering health insurance premiums by $800 annually for Americans who buy insurance through the Unaffordable Care Act. Fact check. Ever since 2008, Democrats have been assuring me that they are going to lower my health care costs. And they have done nothing but go up. Before the Unaffordable Care Act, in my own experience, free or nearly free health insurance was included with every full-time job I ever had. And after the Unaffordable Care Act, let's just say I am still eagerly awaiting the Affordable Care. Section 3. Worked with Republicans to rebuild America's infrastructure. First bullet point, rebuilding roads and bridges. Second bullet point, investing in passenger train and public transit. Third bullet point, expanding affordable high-speed internet for all Americans. Fact check, working with Republicans. We got to pump the brakes and talk about this one, Joe and Ron. First of all, I thought Republicans were evil, awful, semi-fascist insurrectionists who stand as a threat to the very survival of our sacred democracy. So it's weird that you would want to brag about collaborating with such people. Second of all, passing a gigantic pork barrel spending bill on a straight party line vote with only Liz Cheney and crying Adam Kinzinger and 3 or 4 other squishy liberal Republicans crossing the aisle is a pretty goddamn pitiful excuse for bipartisanship. Section 4 worked with Republicans to make more in America by passing the CHIPS and Science Act. First bullet point, investing in semiconductor manufacturing and other advanced cutting-edge technologies here in America. Second bullet point, creating good-paying jobs in manufacturing. Fact check. Again, this is another party line pork barrel boondoggle spending bill that has not created one single manufacturing job in America, good paying or otherwise. And they are still bragging about working with those democracy-hating fascists in the GOP for some reason. Section 5 brought together Republicans and Democrats to pass the first meaningful gun safety legislation in 30 years. First bullet point, removing firearms from dangerous individuals. Second bullet point, expanding mental health services in schools. Third bullet point, supporting school safety and narrows the boyfriend loophole to keep guns out of the hands of convicted dating partners? Fact check. As you no doubt have noticed, the syntax just gets more and more tortured as we go along. We've got wild shifts between the past tense and the present tense, even within the same sentence sometimes. Seriously, if a 6th grade student put this thing together for a class project, I think they would fail. And this begs a whole series of questions. Did Ron Klain actually type this thing up himself and not allow anybody to proofread it? Or did he call up Eric Swalwell and ask if Fang Fang was available for a freelance writing project? And they still are really leaning into this whole thing about we worked with the Republicans, which I'm sorry, that just can't be reconciled with the words that come out of Joe Biden's mouth on the rare occasions when he is speaking intelligibly enough to be understood. Section 6. Despite global challenges, we're making progress. First bullet point, 10 million jobs created, unemployment near record lows. Second bullet point, unemployment near record lows. You just said that. Including for Black and Hispanic Americans. Third bullet point, more small businesses launching than ever before. Fourth bullet point, rally the world in defense of Ukraine in the face of Putin's aggression. Fifth bullet point, and no taxes on people making above $400K. He kept his promise. Fact check. Okay, we got to pump the brakes really hard on this one. It seems, unless I am reading it wrong, like they just said rich people won't have to pay taxes anymore. Quote, no taxes on people making above $400K. The best guess I have for this one is that they meant to say below and for some bizarrely inexplicable reason typed above instead, and then blasted it out for public consumption on the internet? Is this really something you want to have tweeted out, Ron Klain? Because it's getting worse as we go along, in case you hadn't noticed. Feel free to at least have one of the office interns check the thing for obvious typos. I don't know. It could be pretty embarrassing if you wind up sending out a big load of bumbling, incoherent nonsense. But then I guess Joe Biden is the president, so bumbling, incoherent nonsense is what the people expect. As for the rest of the bullet points, those are all just bald-faced lies that a reasonably intelligent child should be able to debunk without very much effort. Section 7, final section, thank heaven for small mercies. Meanwhile, Republicans in Congress are extreme. First bullet point, proposing a national ban on abortion. Second bullet point, planning to put Medicare and Social Security on the chopping block. Third bullet point, trying to raise costs on Americans by repealing the Inflation Reduction Act. Fact check. Again, who the hell is writing this crap? You just used 3 of the 7 sections to crow about the fact that you've supposedly been working across the aisle with Republicans in a bipartisan fashion, which is a lie, but never mind that. And now you close by calling those same people a bunch of dangerous extremists who want to take away grandma's Social Security? I'm sorry, you have to pick one or the other. This is the most unintentionally hilarious thing that has come out of the Biden White House since the life of Linda, and I am a big Linda fan, so that is not something I say lightly. She is still my number 4 most viewed episode, after all. And most importantly, Linda don't need no man, because a woman needs a man like a dolphin needs fucking ice skates. So there you have it. Joe Biden's great Thanksgiving equalizer. All across America tomorrow evening, young purple-haired, neck-tattooed wokesters will stride into the lion's den of their parents' homes, secure in the knowledge that with Ron Klain's talking points having been committed to memory, there is no freaking way that Dad and Uncle Frank are gonna defeat him this year. And isn't that, after all, what Thanksgiving is supposed to be about? Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, heated political arguments, and family character assassination, the building of walls of resentment that take the whole next calendar year to tear down. So thank you, Ron Klain and Joe Biden, for this valuable reminder of what really matters during the holiday season. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Here is wishing everyone a delightful, edifying Thanksgiving where the tryptophan comas are long and the political conversations are non-existent. I'm undecided on whether to do a Friday video this week, but if anybody has got any fantastic topic ideas, feel free to shout them out. So have a pleasant tomorrow. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.